Hi friends, welcome to my channel. My name's Fiddle. Today is part 2 to making Jack's bed. In this episode, we'll be making the mattress, the fitted sheet, the blankets, and the pillows. If you would like to make this bed along with me, you can check the link in the description labeled Scavenger Hunt. That will take you to the list of materials and a free printable pattern. If you downloaded it last week, you don't have to worry about it, you're good to go. Okay, let's get started. We're going to begin with the mattress first. And for this you'll need some sort of flat foam. I'm using what was a cushion from a chair. And you could also use quilt batting. It's all up to you. I used 3 layers to bulk up my mattress, but you'll want it to be just under an inch thick altogether. Once you have your pattern traced, go ahead and cut it out. Because I'm using multiple layers of foam, I did use double-sided tape in the center of each one to help them stick together. Okay, now we're ready to start cutting our fabric. Use your mattress foam to measure how wide you need your side strip to be, staying within that 1-inch margin. Then draw a strip that'll be long enough to go all the way around the side of the mattress. If your fabric is not long enough, you can always make more than one strip and sew them together. When you go to cut this piece out, make sure that you are leaving a little bit of a seam allowance on either side. Once you have your strip cut out, set it aside, and we're going to continue cutting the rest of the pieces out of the fabric. The next piece will be the top and bottom of the mattress, and this would also be a good time to transfer all your dot knots to both pieces. To make things a little bit easier on myself and to make sure that both pieces were exactly the same, I only traced the pattern one time, then folded the fabric in half and cut it out. Before we start sewing our pieces together, hem over the very end of our long strip. I did not do this and I should have. Okay, once you've done that, we are ready to start sewing our pieces together, starting with one of the mattress pieces and the hemmed end of our long strip. Start sewing it about 1/4 of the way across the bottom. This will make a little bit of an overlap that we don't have to worry about stitching later. Once you've went all the way around and you've met back up at your starting point, we want to sew just a little bit beyond that, fold over our long strip again, and put another hem in so that way we have nice clean lines. And full disclosure, I am not a seamstress and I am not the greatest at sewing, but I know enough to get me by if I need it. The corners did give a little bit of problems, but as long as you follow your lines, you should be fine. To sew on the other mattress piece, use pins to hold it in place, and then follow your lines the way you did on the other side. Keep going until you've made it all the way around. Now that it's all sewn together, we can flip it right side out through the hole that we left on the side. Now that we've got our outer lining sewn, we can stuff our mattress. If you're using a sheet foam like I am, it's a lot easier to roll it up like a Swiss roll and then push it through the hole. Once you have it completely inside, you can use your fingers and just move it around to get it unrolled again. And the last thing we need to do to finish up the mattress is to put the bed knots in. If you don't want to have as many bed knots as I have marked out, you don't have to put them all in. I did put a lot of them on there. And it really does help if you mark out where the dots are. I was freehanding while doing this and mine are not all evenly spaced. But to make the bed knots, you want to start by pulling the needle through on the back and then poke down in almost exactly the same spot, then knot it on the back and cut off the excess. Start each knot spot with its own thread, meaning don't go from one knot to the next without cutting your string. Once you have all your knots knotted, you can go back through with a pair of scissors and trim down all the little stringy bits. The next thing we're going to make is the green foot blanket. The first thing we need to do is draw out all of our lines on one piece of the green fabric. Now cut your quilt batting in the other side for your green fabric. Next, pin the green fabric that you drew the lines on and your quilt batting together. Once you have it secure, we're ready to start sewing. I started with the inside diagonal lines first. I'm really not sure if that's technically how you're supposed to do it, but in my mind I thought it would be easier doing it that way than going around the perimeter and the inside being off and having bumps or waves where I didn't want them. Next, go around the outside edge. Now we can pin and sew our two pieces of green fabric together along the seam line, making sure that our quilt batting is on the outside, and you leave a hole small enough that we can flip it right side out. Then flip it right side out and sew up the hole. We have one more thing to do for this foot blanket, and that is to add on the white spots. I used a metal ball tool and some white paint. However, I would suggest a sponge over this. With the waves in the fabric, it was a little bit hard to make circles. Next, we're going to make the yellow blanket. I didn't make a pattern for this one, but to get it the right size, lay it over top of your bed and hold the ends to where they meet the feet. In the end, it will be a little bit shorter than this, but that's the way I measured mine. And also for the length, it would depend if you want it to fold over or just be flat. I used a piece of white fabric for the back of mine, pin them together, and then sew around the outside edge, leaving an opening so we can flip it right side out. Unlike the green foot blanket, I didn't add any quilt stitching to the inside of it, I just left it as is. Flip it right side out and then sew up the hole. And then I eventually ended up getting sick, so I didn't get to finish the video over the weekend. So hopefully I'll get it done within the next few days because I finally got my materials, so I'm ready to start building the third floor, and then we can come back to doing the furniture. Anyways, once you've sewn up the hole, the blanket is finished, and we can move on to making the fitted bed sheet. I didn't provide a pattern for this because our made mattress is what we're going to use to measure how big our sheet needs to be, and I went with 1 inch all the way around since that's what I used to make the mattress. Once you have your piece of fabric cut out, fold it into fourths, and then we're going to cut a diagonal line right on the corner. But if you would like to use your mattress as a measuring guide so you know how far in to cut it, you can also do it that way. Okay, now that we've got our slanty cuts cut, we need to square them off by cutting off the pointy triangle part on all 4 corners. Now we can sew all 4 corners together. And while I'm busy doing that, I have a little bit of an update. Unfortunately, the other day I hurt my finger. I had x-rays, but they can't tell if it's broke or not because I have tiny bones. So they said it could be broke, and it just not show up on the x-rays yet. It doesn't look broke. I don't think it is broke, and I've been wearing a splint and that's really been helping. But unfortunately, it's limited me on what I can do because I'm really not too sure about using an X-Acto knife when I've got a splint on, but unfortunately it hurts if I don't. But on the plus side, I do have my corrugated plastic to build the third floor. It's just gonna have to wait a little bit longer. So that means we're gonna continue on with more of the pieces that go inside until my finger is good enough that I trust myself to use the knife. Once you have all four corners sewn, we can flip it right side out and make sure it fits on our mattress. Now that we know that it fits good, we need to make it a fitted sheet, and we're going to do that with just needle and thread, going all the way around the bottom edge. Once you've made it all the way around, stretch out the fabric end so it's nice and straight. Then turn it right side out and stick the mattress inside. Now we're going to pull on the ends of our thread to tighten the fabric around the mattress. Keep pulling the thread and shuffling the fabric until it looks about even on both ends. Then tie a knot in your string and cut off the excess. And now we've got a fitted sheet for our mattress. We have one more thing to make, and that is the cat pillow. And it really is a sad cat pillow. I'm sure yours would turn out better than mine. My sewing skills are not the greatest, and I didn't have a pattern to go off of. I was making it as I went. But anyways, you'll need to trace your pattern onto a piece of white fabric, and you'll also need an embroidery hoop. Next, you'll need a little bit of green fabric and to trace out the eyes and nose onto it. And to help me out a little bit, I did put a piece of double-sided tape on the back so that way I could just stick it to the fabric. You could either do this by cutting it out of the pattern piece or tracing it onto your fabric. Then cut them out. We will be stitching these down in just a bit, but first let's give them a mouth, and for that you'll need some green embroidery floss. I can't exactly explain how to do embroidery because I'm really not for sure, but as long as you're making a curved line, I think you've got it. Now that our cat has his smile, we need to give him his whiskers. To make them look a little more whiskery-like, I used thread instead of embroidery floss. And instead of making it multiple stitches, I just did one long stitch for each whisker. To give our hands a bit of a break, he does need some black pupils. Using the reference, it looks like there's some sort of tan yellow stitching along the mouth and around the eyes. This part is completely optional for the mouth, and I used a yellow orangey embroidery floss for this. Because the eyes and nose are so small, it's a lot easier to use thread here. Now that the cat's face is ready, we can cut it out and turn it into a pillow. For the back side of mine, I used the same color that I did for the eyes and nose. And the process is just the same as we did for the other pillow. Sew along our drawn on line, then cut off the excess. Turn it right side out and stuff it. Sew up the hole and our cat pillow is done. We have one more thing to do before we can call this project done, and that is to make it to where the blanket stays where we want it. There are a few different ways to do this. One, you can wrap your bed in saran wrap or aluminum foil. I like using aluminum foil better because there's more structure to it, and if I wanted to put waves or bunch the blanket up, I could use the aluminum foil as the structure for that. Once you have the aluminum in the shape you want, paint the underneath side of your blanket with a mixture of watered down glue. We want to completely saturate it, but we don't want to flood it or over soak it. Now we can lay the blanket over top of our aluminum and get it situated on how we want it to look. Then let it completely dry. And now we're ready to put the whole thing together and see what it looks like. And with that, it brings us to the end of our tutorial. I hope this gives you some ideas for your next project. And if you've made it this far, thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate you. If you're new, welcome. I'm glad you're here. And if you haven't already, don't forget to click the like and subscribe button so you can stay up to date and find out what's going to be made next. Thank you, Ginger, and I'll see you next time.